Okay, my name's Akiva Tatz, and I was asked to say a few words that I hope you'll find relevant to your own program of learning and developing. Maybe we could study a little Kabbalah together. Can we do that? Is that good?
Great.
You know, the idea is that Kabbalah is the spiritual core of the world. It is like the genetic material that emanates into reality. So if you grasp an idea in this area of wisdom, then you have a key to understanding many things. Just like I happen to be a doctor, and you know in medicine, when you study the body, you go back to the genetics. You go back to embryology, how the fetus is formed, and from there you go back to the genes. No one serious studies anything medical today without going back to genetics. If that explains things. If you know how to read the genes, then you know what emanates from them. So you always go back to the deepest level of explanation. In chemistry and physics and mathematics, we go back to the principles, the laws. You don't want the details, you want the rules, the laws. That's what Kabbalah is, very abstract. But you grasp an idea in that field of wisdom, you have a key to explaining many things. So let me share with you an idea that is very relevant to moving from Chanukah on into the rest of the winter. And let's see if we can feel this in Torah and then in life. So here's the idea. In the great Kabbalistic works, for example, the great Eitz Chaim, which is the prime commentary on the Zohar, great Kabbalistic work, one of the first areas that's discussed is the fact that the world is built on light, and there are always two lights. Why we talk about light needs explanation, but let's just say the world is something that's revealed to us, and the medium of revelation is light. So we say that all that is built is emanation of lights. But the point is that when the light shines, it always shines twice. Always two lights, always in pairs. The first light is perfect, but it never lasts. The second light is nothing compared to the first, but it's the one that lasts and the one that is intended. In more detail, the first light is very, very intense because it needs to open a space where there was no space before. Once it opens the space, we're talking about creating a space. As soon as it's done that, it goes away. And then it leaves a very painful longing for the light that was there in the darkness that it leaves behind. And that longing, that suffering, brings back this light a second time. But the second time the light comes back in, it's nothing compared to the first. But this second light remains. Now I'm sure you feel very Kabbalistically enlightened. But that's the idea. Well, let's think it through a little bit more. Let's take it one level down. The first light is the world of possibilities. Before a thing can be, it must be possible. Before an object can exist, it must have a place. Right? You cannot have a thing without a place. Before an event can be, or anything can be in the world, it must be possible. So first the possibility has to open. After it's possible, then the thing happens. And the possibilities are always infinite. The first light is always infinite. Right? For example, let's bring it down another step. You wake up in the morning. There's anything you could do today. You have endless possibilities. You could do millions of things. Well, you could do one of millions of things. What you actualize is always limited. The possibilities are infinite. We call them Ein Sof, the no end to the possibilities. The thrill, the exhilaration of the beginning of a project, like waking up in the morning, is that the day is completely open. The blessing of that moment is that it's all infinitely possible. The danger is you've done nothing yet. When you finish the day, the blessing of the end of the day is that you've done it. Whatever you achieved, you achieved. The curse is, that's all. All the others that you could have done have disappeared. Is this clear? So the world of potential is infinite and perfect. This world of potential is called male. Male. The world of the real is called female. The blessing of the male is infinite potential. The curse of the male is just potential. The blessing of the female is she brings birth to the world. A child is born. But the curse of the female is it's only this one. The Kabbalists say that the pain of our world is that it's only this one. The beauty of the world is that it's here. By the way, it's very interesting that male and female, I'll never forget the experience of having to dissect a human embryo. At medical school, I had to dissect an unborn child. And one of the things you see, which is amazing, you see that the organs that form seed, they form from the kidneys. See this little baby, 2 months old, 3 months, I'm talking about 3 months of intrauterine development. See a piece of the kidney breaks off and it starts moving down in the body. Any medical students here? Medical students?
Hopeful medicals.
This piece of tissue moves down in the body to become the organs that form seed. In the male, they become organs that form seed by the billion. Billion! In the woman, they form eggs one at a time and you can count each one. And if she ovulates every month of her fertile life, she will use every single one. It's complete opposites. And when male and female meet, the male gives seed by the billion and the woman gives one egg only. The male is a hopeless overabundance of potential. No hope of ever coming to fruition. And the woman makes it specific. In Hebrew, the word for female is nekeva. Nekeva means female, and it means to make limited, to make specific. Asher nikvu b'shemot, the ones who are fixed by name. Or nakva scharcha alai ve'etene, fix your wages and I'll pay you. Give me a number. Imagine a person walks up to you and says, say any number you want, I'll give you that much money. Any number. This is male. Right? When you say a number, two things happen. When you say a number, you get the money and not 1 cent more. But you have to say a number. While it's living in the world of potential, it could be bigger and bigger, there's nothing. When you fix it, and it can be in the world, then you have it, but only that. Are we together? And therefore the world of potential is always amazing. The first light is infinite. But it's only there to make things possible, then it goes away. Then you have to make the real. You have to decide which it is. You wake up in the morning, that's a gift. The day's ahead of you, it's amazing. Now you have to take over. Now what are you going to do? So you have to make a choice, it's very painful. That's why men don't like making choices. They want it all open. The Maharal says that's why a man can marry many women. Man can marry many women. It's a multi-potential source. What woman in her right mind would want more than one husband? One's usually more than enough. So that's it. That's the first light. And it's always perfect. And it's there to inspire and uplift and open the possibilities. And then it goes. Let's try and apply this in Torah. You know that, let's take Chanukah and see what it teaches us. You know that there's an amazing discussion in the Torah. Let's learn a little bit of Torah together. It goes like this. We read it yesterday morning. The Torah describes the gifts that the heads of each tribe brought when the Mishkan, the sanctuary, the tabernacle, whatever you want to call it in the desert, that structure which was the place of meeting of God and the Jewish people, which later became the temple and later the second temple. When that was inaugurated in the desert, the Jewish people move out of Egypt, they build the Mishkan. When that was inaugurated or dedicated, so the tribes, the leader of each tribe brought gifts. The Nesiim, each tribe had a leader, and they brought a series of gifts, each tribe, and they made their presentations in dedication of the what's called Chanukah Samizbeach, Chanukah Tamizbeach. Chanukah means inauguration, dedication. The word chinuch in Hebrew is the same word as Chanukah, that's the root. Chinuch means education. That's the ignition of a child's intellectual process. So they brought gifts, that was their offering, tribute. And the next parasha in the Torah, immediately following, is the mitzvah that Aaron was given to light the lights, right? Aaron a Kohen, the high priest, he was given the mitzvah to light the menorah, right? The 7-branched menorah in the Mishkan. God said to him, you light the menorah every day. That's the discussion. So Rashi says, why are these two put together? No accidents in Torah. Why is the Torah telling me about the gifts of the princes? And right after that God speaks to Aaron and says to him, you light the lights. Rashi says the reason is this. Stay with me carefully. Rashi says the reason is, quoting earlier sources, as he always does, that when Aaron saw them bringing their gifts, he was tremendously dismayed. Tremendously distressed. He was a person whose whole being was service of God, and he's not having a part to play. Neither he nor his tribe are active. He's watching passively while each of these men brings his gift, and he has no part to play in that, no role, and he's watching tremendously distressed. They're beginning the inauguration. They're dedicating the Mishkan. From now, God is going to meet the Jewish people in this place and move through history together, and he's not involved. Tremendously distressed. So distressed that he almost lost his mind. When Hashem saw his distress, he said to him, Chayecha, which is interesting language, it's a divine oath. Shelcha gedol mishalayim, your share is greater than theirs, you light the menorah. When Aaron heard that he has a role to play, that he lights the menorah, then he felt fine. So that's the conversation. These people are bringing their gifts. Aaron, neither he nor the Levim, the Levites, or the Kohanim, his tribe, his people, they have no part to play. He feels distressed about it. God sees his distress. You have a part to play, you light the menorah. That's Rashi. The great Ramban deconstructs this Rashi, and by the time he's finished, there's nothing left standing. Right? He attacks it, he asks a series of questions, each more difficult than the next. Let me tell you what he says and what he answers. For homework, for your own exercise, try to figure out Rashi. Right? After the Ramban has taken him apart, there's nothing left. How would Rashi deal with these questions? Right? They're a very interesting exercise. It's a challenge. We won't have time to do that now. The Ramban says this. I don't understand. Aaron is watching these people bring their gifts and he feels distressed. Why? The whole Mishkan is him. The Mishkan, the sanctuary in the desert, is all the Kohanim. They bring the sacrifices, they sing the songs, they bring the morning sacrifice, the afternoon sacrifice. He brings the incense, which is Kabbalistically the highest of the sacrifices. He goes into the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur. No other human being does that. The whole Mishkan is him. What's he feeling distressed about? These people are bringing a one-time gift. They're going to deposit their gift and they're out of here. And from that moment on, the whole thing is him. And he's dismayed because he doesn't have this one. That's question number one. Question number two is, if he lacks a part to play, a role in the Mishkan, that's what's distressing him. How does he feel better when he's told that he lights the lights? Why is that the solution? The morning sacrifice is not good enough. The afternoon sacrifice is not good. The daily sacrifice is not good enough. The going to the Holy of Holies is not good enough. Offering the incense, not good enough. But when he hears that he lights the menorah, then suddenly he has enough. What does that mean? Do you see the problem? Do we share the problem? The problem is this. This is the dedication of the tent of meeting where God meets the Jewish people. And in that, like there's always a moment of dedication, like the Queen. I live in England now, right? You start something with the Queen comes and she cuts the ribbon. Like now it's open. Or they launch a ship, she smashes a bottle of champagne. And I hope it doesn't sink the ship. Then it's a moment of inauguration, dedication. The Mishkan is being dedicated, and so the Jewish people represented. Each tribe is bringing a gift in dedication. The great high priest, Aaron, is watching this, and he's tremendously distressed. He doesn't have a part to play. So God says to him, you have a part to play, you light the menorah. Inside this Mishkan, there's a daily lighting of the candelabrum, you light that. That's Rashi's explanation. The Ramban says, I don't get it. Aaron is watching them bring their gifts, and he's dismayed. Has he forgotten that all the function in the Mishkan is him, all the sacrifice? According to Kabbalah, the incense is the highest of the sacrifices because it uses the sense of smell. Smell, according to Kabbalah, is a very, very high sense. Smell is directly connected to the soul. That's why when Saturday night, when Shabbat goes out, we smell spices to revive the soul. When Shabbat leaves and the soul is let down, so to revive it, we smell. Why smell? Have a hot bath, have a pizza, Smell goes directly to, you know that the nerves from the nose go directly into the brain. There's no other nerves in the body like that. All other sensory nerves, they go through ganglia, way stations, where they join other nerves. Nerves from the nose go straight up into the brain. You know, the nose has two functions. The nose is smelling and breathing. According to Kabbalah, if one part of the body has more than one function, those functions must be connected, else they wouldn't have been put in the same part of the body. When God constructed the human body, why did he put two functions into one organ? There are many organs like that. Those functions must be connected. That's why they're vested in the same place. Breathing and smelling both in the nose. Why? Because they're both life forces. Breathing is where you live. When the human being was created, the soul was breathed into his body through his nose. In Hebrew, the word for breath, neshima, is the same word as neshama, the soul. Yoga is based on this. Right? The life energy. The in and out of the life energy. By the way, the life was breathed into the human being through the nose, and people used to die by breathing out. In the ancient world, people died by sneezing. That's why in all cultures there's a blessing when you sneeze. So life was given through the nose, and it left through the nose. And smell is a sense of life. Things that are alive smell wonderful. Things that are dead smell terrible. And the more alive they are, the better they smell. And the more alive they are, the worse they smell when they die. Nothing smells better than a newborn child, and nothing smells worse than a dead human being, I can tell you, unfortunately. A newborn child smells so good that even if he's soiled, he has excrement on him, you can make blessings in his presence, because even his excrement is sweet. I'm talking about a breastfed child, a nursing child, before he eats any extraneous food. So smell, the Gemara says when the Mashiach comes, the Messiah, he will smell sanctity. He'll smell Yiras Hashem. Also, the nose is the first part of you. When the high priest goes into the Kodesh Kodashim, the nose goes first. When you enter a room, I mean, it depends how you built, you know, but if you look the way you should, you know, your nose goes first, right? So he brings the incense. So let's understand, the problem is that these men are bringing a one-time gift. Aaron has no part to play, he feels terrible. Hashem says, don't feel bad, you have a part to play, you light the lights. Says the Ramban, why do you feel terrible? It's a one-time gift. He is the continual process of the Mishkan. And why, when he lights the menorah, does that make him feel good? Listen to Ramban's answer. Very mysterious. The Ramban, and I'm paraphrasing because those greats of that generation speak very briefly. So I'm adding a little to his words. But basically what he says is this. Listen carefully to this. Aaron was not distressed because he had no part to play. He wasn't craving a role. He was craving Chanukah. Chanukah means inauguration, dedication. He knew that the first moment is everything. If you're not there at the beginning, you're a come lately. If you're not there when the genes fuse, when the parents are together and the genes of the child fuse, at that moment the whole future of the child's laid down. The color of his eyes, then the shape of his nose, that's all there. It will take time to reveal as the pregnancy develops. But it's all there in the first moment. Aaron is not jealous because he has no role to play, but he cannot handle the idea that he's not there at the moment of inauguration. This is conception. This is the process. This is the part that conditions the whole future. This is why Rosh Hashanah is so important. It's the first day of the year, and it conditions the way the whole year will look. The great Kabbalists never used to sleep on Rosh Hashanah. You want the year to be formed in unconsciousness? The first moment is the first moment of a relationship. The first moment of, that's when the awareness, that's when the sharpness of experience, the first moment is everything. He's not craving a role. He craves being in at the moment of ignition. That's called Chanukah. Chanukah means dedication, inauguration. And Hashem says to him, you have a Chanukah. Not you, but your great-grandchildren. They will come into a temple that's been defiled by the Greeks and contaminated. And there's no lights being lit anymore. And your great-grandchildren, they will light the lights of Chanukah. Not the menorah being lit for the first time now. But they'll light it a second time, many centuries from now. And that's greater than this one. Why is it greater? Because this light, incredible though it is, will not last. There'll be a destruction, the temple will be destroyed, the temple will be contaminated, defiled, and it's going to be defunct. But your great-grandchildren, they're going to light a light called Chanukah, that will burn until Mashiach comes. In every Jewish window, there'll be a little flame shining into the darkness of winter, and that's never going to stop until Mashiach comes, and that's great. When he heard that, he was fine. Now what does the Ramban say? What does he mean? Why is lighting the lights of Chanukah many centuries later, 1,000 years later, Why is that greater than the first light? The first light was unbelievable. The Gemara says that the first light in the Mishkan, when they lit the menorah, you could see through objects by that light. You didn't see the outside of an object, you saw inside an object. In Kabbalah, that's called the Ora Ganus, the hidden light of creation. Unbelievable light. The second light was nothing. It was a light. It's oil. Why is it greater? Now let's try to understand. Here's an amazing... Many people have said that what I'm about to share with you is the most important thing they ever heard. So it's important. Life always has two phases. There's phase 1, which is the first light, and phase 2, which is the second light. Phase 1 is unbelievable. It's amazing. It's all possibilities. It uplifts you and inspires you, but it lasts only long enough to convince you that it will last forever, and then it's taken away. And then you feel the cruel letdown. You're abandoned and hopeless. And that's where you have to pick yourself and make it real. That's when you have to shine the second light yourself. How much light are you capable of shining? Very little. But that's the one that's real. Let's take a few examples. Take a national example. How the Jewish people formed. The Jewish people are formed in Egypt. They reach a point of no return, and suddenly there's a blaze of miracles. 10 plagues, each one higher than the one before. Unbelievable voltage that they experienced. And they did nothing, they just sat back and watched. You know, our teaching is that the 10 plagues in Egypt, each one was higher than the one before. It was not simply a sequence, it was a crescendo experience. Right? For example, one way to see that is this. The Maharal points out that the plagues in Egypt went in reverse order of the process of creation. You know, you can be a rank beginner, but you have to know the Torah is based on 10. Right? Everyone knows it, no? Yes? 10? 10 commandments, 10 statements of creation, 10 trials that Abraham was put through, 10 ordeals the Jews faced in the desert, 10 commandments, right? 10. 10 statements of creation. The first one is Bereshit, in the beginning. Dimensionless point of origin. The second is Yehi Or, let there be light, where that point begins to be revealed. You build 10 layers. Why were there 10 plagues in Egypt? Because the Egyptians had so contaminated all 10 layers of reality, the so-called 10 sfirot, the Kabbalistic layers, that each plague in Egypt was a detoxification, a purification of one of those layers that had been damaged. You build from the center, and you have 10 layers like skins of an onion. When you purify, you peel the layers away from the outside till you get back to the pure center. So the statements of creation go in reverse order to the plagues in Egypt. What is the first statement of creation? Genesis, in the beginning, pure beginning. What is the last of the 10 plagues? Destruction of the firstborn, the wrong sort of beginning. The second statement of creation, let there be light. The second last of the plagues, the plague of darkness, extinguishing the wrong light. Work it out, it's an amazing thing to see. But what we can extract from this is this. When that incredible midnight arrived, when the firstborn were destroyed, you've reached back to the moment of creation. You've reached back to the moment when the whole thing is... You know, the Haggadah says that the 10th plague was done by God himself. Ani v'lo malach, ani v'lo saraf, ani v'lo... I and no angel. Meaning you've reached back to a moment, which is the first of the 10 commandments? I am. Not even a commandment, just a statement of Hashem's being. By the way, the last of Abraham's 10 tests was having to kill his firstborn. You see, we come back to the same point. The whole pattern is obvious. But the Jews experience an incredible voltage at that moment, and 7 days later it gets more when the sea splits. No human being had ever experienced that sort of voltage. And then comes the surprise. Then they get dropped in the desert. And a desert always means a place of death forces. So what's the process? Incredible crescendo experience of being uplifted for free. And then Hashem steps back and says, now you walk through the desert. And then it's a painful and dangerous journey through the desert, one step after another. You know, the word Pesach, leaving Egypt, means to leap over. Pesach means to leap over. According to Kabbalah, the first night of Pesach, you leap to the 50th level. Then, after you've experienced that, then you have to count the Omer, one day after another, counting each day separately, doing the work. This is called fly now, pay later. First day, you leap to the 50th level. You get the message, you like it, then God steps back and says, now you do it. Then we'll meet at Sinai. Then we'll meet as equals. First, I do it for you. All of life is like that. You know, the month of leaving Egypt is Nisan. Nisan means miracles. What's the zodiac of Nisan? Any astrologers? What's the mazal? Yeah, mazal of Nisan is the sheep. That's a passive animal that just follows. The next month, Iyar in the desert is? What's the zodiac? The bull, that doesn't follow at all. The bull, ox, develops its own strength. Complete opposite characteristic. And the third month of the giving of the Torah, Sivan, is? Gemini. Twins. Perfect harmony between the two. The two tablets, Moshe and Aaron, Hashem and us, the oral and the written law, all the dualities coming together. And that's the secret of all life. Stage 1, it's done for you. It's incredible and amazing. Stage 2, you get let down. Now you do it. Get the message? Now you do it. Then we'll meet as equals, when I've done mine to inspire you and you've done yours to construct yourself. How does a man teaches his child to walk? He holds a little baby and lifts him to his feet for the first time. Little child stands there on his feet. What a moment. And he takes his first step, an exhilarating moment. And he can't fall because his dad's holding his hands. And as he feels the thrill of that first step, his dad lets go. And the child stands there terrified and alone. But that's when he learns to walk. And only when he takes that first frightened step on his own can he rush into his father's arms and realize that when his father let go, he was showing him more love than when he held his hands. If he never lifted you up, you wouldn't do it. But if he held you permanently, what would you be? That's the pattern of life. First it gets done for you. And when you think it'll last forever, then you get cruelly let down. That's where you become real. How did you learn to ride a bicycle? Your father, he held the saddle, right? And he ran next to you. Oh, cool. Then you look back and he wasn't holding. Ah! But that's when you learn to ride. He wouldn't have gotten there had he not held you. But if he held you permanently, you never learn to ride. You take a personal example. The Gemara says that a child in the womb is taught the whole Torah. Child's conceived. For 9 months, he lives inside his mother's body. An angel teaches him the whole Torah. He sees from one end of the world to the other. He knows all cosmic wisdom. He knows the whole Torah. He knows his future. He knows everything. Jew, non-Jew, man, woman, knows everything. At the point of birth, he gets a cruel blow. Angel teaches him Torah. Then he gets a cruel blow. He forgets it all, and he's born a little baby who knows nothing. Why would Hashem arrange for an angel to teach a child the whole Torah only to make him forget it when you're about to be born? What sense does that make? The answer is you don't forget. It's driven deep into your subconscious. And as you move through life, you have a sense of great wisdom being just out of reach. That's why when you learn something spiritually true, you don't have a sense of learning it, you have a sense of recognizing. You say, oh, no, that's right. How do you know? Because it's resonating with your deep. You know, if you learn Torah, you sit in the yeshiva, right? Or Sameach, you sit here, and you learn very hard. If you learn very deeply, sometimes you make what's called a chidush. Chidush, a novel idea. You have a novel insight, amazing insight in Torah. And if you practice, then you do it a lot, you can write a whole book of your chidushim. And people do that. How can you write your own Torah? What a chutzpah. You don't make up Torah. Torah comes from another world. It's infinite. Answer is you're not making it up. The learning is causing a resonance with your own deep original Torah. And it's being brought out. A good teacher brings it out of you. Indoctrinate means to stuff it in. Educate means to bring it out. You're all learning Gemara? You have a Gemara class? If the Rabbi explains the Gemara to you, he's cheating you. Get rid of him. The Rabbi is there to make you sweat blood. If you go to a gym for a workout and the instructor picks up the weights and puts them in your hand, you send a snapshot to your mother, she'll be very impressed. You won't build any muscle that way. The instructor's there to make sure you do it right, but it's make sure you have to work it out. You got to do the work. And by the way, you don't want the weights up. You want the work that it takes to get them up. That's why the Gemara doesn't give you the conclusions. Forget about the conclusions. You look someplace else for them. The Gemara wants you to do the work. The Gemara wants to teach you to think how God thinks. To think for yourself. If you don't walk out of your Gemara class with a headache, you failed. It's a workout. You're there for the workout. You're not there for the information. Many people say, Rabbi, this is too hard for me. I'm sticking to easier stuff like Kabbalah. Don't understand. The Gemara is designed to be difficult. This is where you get real. By the way, what we call the Baal Tshuva experience, people who were not brought up religious, right? They were brought up normal. They come to yeshiva, they start learning. They're amazing. They hear a spiritual teacher, their Torah, unbelievable. But sooner or later, it becomes hard work. The thrill doesn't last. You need the thrill, otherwise you wouldn't get into it. But when the thrill goes and you start sweating blood to make it happen, that's where you grow, even though it's unbelievably painful. By the way, the Gaon of Vilna says something amazing. He says that when you die, 3 angels come to greet you. 3 angels. One comes to add up all your mitzvahs. One comes to add up all your averos, your transgressions. And the third one comes to see what has become of you. Who are you? Says the Gaon of Vilna, when that third angel approaches and he comes close, you recognize his face. He turns out to be the angel who taught you before you were born. Now at the end of your life, he's come to see, did you do it? That amazing chavrusa that we had together when I gave it all to you. And then it was beaten out of you. Did you recapture that? Did you struggle to make it your own through life? That's the pattern. First it's given for free. It's an amazing show. Then God says, now you walk through the desert and make it happen. Then we'll meet as equals. And wherever you look, the body's built that way. Do you know the nerves in the body are all built that way? You feel a thing and then you don't feel it anymore. In neurology, it's called accommodation. You smell something, it's amazing, and then you get used to it, you don't smell it anymore. You work in a noise going on. People walk in, they say, how can you work in noise like this? You say, what noise? When it stops, you suddenly realize it was there. There's a sensitivity and a sensation, and then it accommodates. You don't feel it anymore. In Jewish marriage, menstrual separation laws are based on this. There's an intensity, then you have to step back to renew the intensity. Phase one cannot last forever. I hate to tell you this, but marriage is like this as well. Marriage has two phases. Most of you probably not married. Not married? Soon you'll go out and you'll find a suitable victim. And you'll get married. You'll find marriage has two phases. Phase one is called romance. In Hebrew, there's not even a word for it. We have a principle that if there's no word for a thing in Hebrew, it's an illusion. We have a word for love. Love means giving. Ahava means to give. You spend 30 years giving to somebody, you could talk about love. You invest yourself in them, you could talk about love. The Hebrew word for love, ahava, adds up to 13, just like the word echad, which means to become one. Our deep sources say you can never love anyone else, only yourself. You can never love anyone else. The only way you can ever love anyone else is when you invest yourself so intensely in them that you are them, then of course you love them, it's you. So what is romance? This is the kind of thing. You stand in a room, this person walks in, suddenly music starts playing, bells start ringing, things get rosy, you get this tight-chested sort of, what is that? Nonsense. After you get married, about 2.5 hours after you get married. Are you married? Are you married? Laugh now. Young man says to me, Rabbi, married the wrong girl. I said, how long have you been married? 2.5 months. Why is she the wrong girl? When I saw her in the beginning, I used to be with her, I couldn't breathe. Now 2.5 months later, breathing fine. I'd explain to this young fellow that if 2.5 months after marriage you're having trouble breathing, you got asthma, because it's got nothing to do with marriage, Phase one lasts long enough to convince you that it will last forever. It's there to get you in and get you high. And when that happens, God steps back and he pulls it away and he says, now you do it. And that's when most people give up. And by the way, you fellows, you have it bad. Because you've been brought up in a generation that recognizes only phase one. You've been brought up in a quick fix generation. If it doesn't happen immediately, got no strength of character, no patience. You all use computers? You're doomed. Modern computers do 10 billion functions in the first 2 microseconds. If it does only 5 billion, it's called slow. Worthless. But what hope do you have? Instantaneous results. What hope do you have? You're going to get married. If the woman you marry doesn't do 5 billion, whatever it is, in the first 2 microseconds, you're going to look for a faster lady. When I was a teenager, if I used to make my mother a cup of tea, I used to make a cup of tea. You poured boiling water into a teapot to warm it, then you poured it out. Then you poured in fresh boiling water and you put in tea leaves. Then you put a special thing on it to keep warm while the tea was drawing. While that was happening, you put hot water in a teacup, then you poured it out. Then you put a strainer on the teacup, then it took a long time to make tea. Today the guy's dipping a bag and it's taking too long. Now it's freeze-dried. Tomorrow it'll be intravenous. Yeah. If you use a computer, you must plant a garden. Because tending a seed week after week and month after month, you learn something about life. If a child is given a computer, you must make him plant a garden. Now, Jewish history has 2 phases. Phase 1 and phase 2. And here's the secret. Imagine the span of Jewish history. So we have 6,000 years, right? The Gemara says the world as we know it will last for 6,000 years. Is it creation? Are we moving through 6,000 years of history? By the way, if this is the year 6,000, we are here. This is the year 5775, right? You look at the span of 6,000 years. We have seen all the prophetic predictions come true, exactly in detail, except for the final messianic ones. But if you go back over the last 6,000 years, you go back 2,300 years, you get back to an amazing moment in history. It's called Chanukah. And that's when the light faded. Phase 1, unbelievable light in Revelation. That's called Gilui Panim. Hashem revealed himself. In those years of history, there were miracles and prophecy. There was no atheism. There were no atheists. History records not a single atheist. There was idolatry, a different issue. That's giving too much sanctity. That's giving sanctity to intermediaries. But nobody in his right mind denied God. You could see him. You went to the temple, there were 10 miracles. Prophets were speaking. The Rambam says when a prophet spoke, you experienced what he said. There was no difference between the davar word and davar object. They were the same thing. Object spoke. The world was incandescent with its message. And then came Purim and then Chanukah. And the light began to fade and it faded. And we are deep into the era of darkness. For the last 2,300 years, we've seen nothing. No prophecy, no miracles. We have a story. Evidence, circumstantial evidence, good evidence, compelling evidence, better than anyone else's, but no proof. God doesn't speak to people directly anymore. If you walk out of here this morning and a big hand taps you on the shoulder and you find you're speaking to God, you need therapy. By the way, how did the light close? First Purim, then Chanukah. What happened at Purim? Purim, the light began to fade. There is a book, there's a Megillah of Purim, it's part of Tanakh, but debatable. The Talmud itself debates, was it written with prophecy or not? Not so clear. Conclusion is it was. No other book in the Bible is a debate whether it belongs or not, because of sanctity. Purim means the luck of the draw. Don't see God's hand, the luck. Purim's not even a Hebrew word. The heroine of Purim is Esther, a woman, the hidden one. Esther means the hidden one. The Megillah doesn't contain God's name. Completely closed. It records a miracle, that's completely natural. There's no ocean splitting, dead people being revived. There was a king, he didn't like Jews. He had a prime minister, wanted to kill all the Jews. Perfectly natural, happens all the time. And eventually the Jews were saved. Where's the miracle? You have to see it. And then 150 years later, you have Chanukah, there's nothing at all. Nothing at all. There's no Megillah, there's not even a Mishnah, there's nothing. Nothing. The only thing that happened at Chanukah was after the war was won, some candles burned for 8 days. But there was no prophecy, no one even saw it except the Kohanim. It had nothing to do with saving the Jewish people. It was private in the sanctuary. It was a last wave goodbye from the world of miracles. And for century after century since then, we've seen nothing. When people say, prove to me that God exists. So I'll give you evidence. Proof? Can't meet that standard. And so, phase 1 of history, unbelievable charging of the batteries. Then Hashem pulls the plug and he says, now you do it. This is called the written law where he dictates it. You just have to listen. You have to see. Now you've got to create it yourself. That's called Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral law. Now it's up to us. Let me add one more dimension, maybe make it a bit clearer. And that's why Gemara is such hard work. Here it wasn't hard work. Here it was hard work to be such a sacred individual that God spoke to you. You plug in and charge. Here the work is you have to make it up yourself. That's why learning Gemara is hard. You're reconstructing from broken fragments. How does the Gemara prove something? It shows you what's wrong. It doesn't show you what's right. It's called a Havamin. The Gemara shows you. You like it? Wrong. You try again. Wrong again. You're constructing the truth out of falsehood. You're learning to see that face value is not right. Let's come back to Kabbalah if we can. Listen carefully, it's an amazing thing. Purim and Chanukah are called the legs of history. Legs. Here's the body, the head, the heart. And then we get to the end of the body. And then you move into the legs. According to Kabbalah, the legs are organs that take you from one place to another, but they're not part of you. The terminology is lebar megufa, they're outside the body. The Arizal says when a woman gives birth, her legs are irrelevant. They're cold, she cannot walk. Her body ends, a new life begins. The legs are out of it. Legs, you know that internally, the legs are the ability to have children. That's called netzach in Hebrew. Netzach and hod. Netzach is the kidney areas. Ability to have children. Externally, it's called the legs. Internally, it's called seed. Why? Because externally, your legs take you from one place to another. Internally, your children take you in a deeper sense from one place to another, from one generation to the next. And they give you eternity because the child is part of you and he has his own children. And so it's eternity. So these are called the post-biblical festivals, Purim and Chanukah. The Torah ends, God stops speaking. And now we move into the legs of history. Is this clear? Outside of the body, now we walk, right? Listen to this Gemara. The Gemara says that the sages of, we'll finish with this. The sages at Yavne were arguing. This is exactly at this time of history. Exactly at this time of history. Right? Just after Chanukah. And they were debating a certain halachic matter. The greatest among them was Rabbi Eliezer. He was the greatest of the generation. And there was his partner, Rabbi Yeshua, who led the majority. And Rabbi Eliezer was in the minority, and they couldn't agree. They came to a conclusion, they decided. He held one way about this halachic status, and they held the other. Rabbi Yeshua, the majority. Came time for a vote, and he wouldn't accept the vote. But they were the majority. They said, Rabbi, we know you know more than us, but we don't understand it your way. And Torah Shabbat Peh, the oral law, goes the way you understand it. So we'll take a vote. He said, I don't accept the vote. What's the point in a vote when you're wrong? Just to give you an example of this, one of the great Torah sages of the last generation was Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz, a great genius. He was a genius as a child. When he was 7 years old, there was a Catholic priest in his town who used to try to convince him to become a Christian. He was so fascinated by this little Jewish boy's brilliance that he continually pressured him to debate with him. One day the priest said to him, I will prove to you that you should become a Christian from your own Bible. I will show you that your Jewish Bible says you should become a Christian. How? Because your Torah, your Bible says, Achrei Rabim Lahatos, follow the majority. That's what it says in your Bible. We Christians are a vast majority. You Jews are a tiny minority. So according to your own principles, you join the majority. Little 7-year-old, he said to the priest, the law of majority applies only in a case of doubt. We vote when we don't know what to do. When you're just wrong, there's no point voting. So the majority wanted to vote. Rabbi Eliezer said, you're wrong. Well, what do you do in a case like that? You don't accept the vote. There's only one recourse left. Prove that you're right. So he said, gentlemen, if I'm right, I want that carob tree outside to get up and walk. And the tree got up and walked. The rabbis looked at the tree and they said, we don't bring proofs from carob trees. These were Litvaks, you understand, not Hasidim. He said, if I'm right, I want that stream of water to flow backwards. The water turned around and flowed uphill. They said, we don't bring proofs from streams of water. He said, if I'm right, I want the walls of the base medrash to cave in. Out of respect to him, the walls began caving in. Out of respect to Beshua, they remained suspended. The rabbis looked at the wall and they said, we don't bring proofs from the walls of the base medrash. He said, if I'm right, I want a voice to be heard. You know whose voice? And a voice boomed out and it said, what are you bothering him for, Rabbi Eliezer? He's right in everything that he says. And the Gemara says, Amad Rabbi Yeshua Raglav, Rabbi Yeshua got to his feet and he said, Lo b'shamayim hi. The Torah is not in heaven. And they outvoted the voice. Subsequently, one of the rabbis met Elijah the prophet and he said to him, what was God doing at the time when we took that vote? And he said, God was smiling and saying, Nitzchuni bana, Nitzchuni bana, my children have defeated me, my children have defeated me. What is going on? What's going on? Outvote. Lo b'shamayim hi means, at this stage in history, the Torah passes into our hands. And we make the decisions. By the way, you know the great Kabbalistic master, the Arizal? Listen to this. Listen carefully to this. He analyzes this Gemara and he has only one question on the whole Gemara. This Gemara, imagine the questions you could ask. There's a carob tree walking up and down. There's a river, the Arizal is bothered by only one statement in the Gemara. Why does it say, Amad Rabbi Yeshua al-Raglav, Rabbi Yeshua got to his feet? That's the problem. Did you notice? That's the difficult line in this Gemara. Why does it say? And he says, that's the central line in this Gemara. From now we stand on our feet. Now it's the legs. Abed Raglav. Now we stand up to here in history. This has been the body. From now we stand on our feet. Now we walk. And we give God eternity that way because He walks on us. Nitzchuni bana, nitzchuni bana. It doesn't mean they've defeated me. It means they've given me netzach, they've given me netzach. They're two legs. They give me eternity. Up to now, I was dictating Torah. Now I step back in history. Now you make it up. What was the first rabbinic decision ever made, by the way? When did a rabbi get up and make a decision with no reference to prophecy, no consulting the Urim v'Tumim? You know what it was? Right here. Matityahu, the great leader of the Chashmonaim at Chanukah. One day he got up and he said, prophecy had ended a century before. He got up and he said, gentlemen, I made a decision. They said, Rabbi, what's your decision? We declare war on the Greek Empire. Rabbi, you and whose army? Well, there's me and my 5 sons. We've got a few old swords. I think we can do it. The Greek Empire, 10,000 war elephants, hundreds of thousands of soldiers. I think so. Did you ask the prophets? No, none of them. Did you consult Urim v'Tumim? Haven't had them for a long time. Rabbi, what makes you think this is the right decision? I think this is the way to go. And they won. Talk about Das Torah. The first rabbinic decision wasn't, well, we'll plait the challahs a little differently, we'll sing a different tune for challah. It was like, Torah moves now into our hands. Lo b'shamayim hi. Right? And we are deep in the second phase. We are deep in the second phase of history. We're at the stage of history where there's almost nothing left. Just to finish with this, according to Kabbalah, the body moves down. Here the legs begin. But we, the bottom of the feet. We, the bottom of the feet. You know what we call this generation? Ikfasa de Mashiach. The literal translation is the footsteps of the Mashiach. You can see the Messiah, you can hear him approaching. The Kabbalists say it means we are the thick, dead skin on the bottom of the feet. You, me, that's who we are. You know what's a characteristic of the thick skin on the bottom of the feet? It's dead. According to the Gemara says the heels don't rot after death because they're dead even when you're alive. That's why they're insensitive. In South Africa, as a teenager, in the summer, we used to walk barefoot. I had a friend who used to put his lighted cigarettes out on the bottom of his bare feet. Thick, dead skin, don't feel anything. One of the Kabbalists of this generation said that's exactly like us. You know what's amazing about the bottom of the feet? Speaking medically, no nerves at all. You can cut it, stick pins in, but the most sensitive part of the body to being tickled. Very interesting. Superficial stimulation makes you laugh. That's our generation. Totally insensitive to the worst brutality and immorality, but available for superficial stimulation that makes empty laughter. That's how he characterized us. Anyway, be that as it may, what we studied today is the idea that all life experience has 2 phases. Begins inspired, gets a free gift, it's exhilarating, but it's taken away. But where you get real is in stage 2. It happens in marriage, it happens in friendships, it happens in athletics and in music, and whatever inspires you has to become difficult to be acquired. And in Torah it has 2 stages. Torah is the written Torah, which is dictated prophetically, where the work is to absorb it and be sensitive to it. And then there's the work of getting up on your feet and walking and making it happen, which is painful. But it's all the pain that you put into your learning, the effort to understand, not be fed it automatically, where you've got to grapple with it, and where the teacher helps you to do the work. That's where you grow. And therefore the message we take from Chanukah into the winter and the future is really that there's phases in life that are easy, and the work then is to be inspired and to feel it. And there's phases in life that are difficult, and the work there is not to give up, but to get up on your feet and walk. Yes, any questions before we close?
If we taking the principle that as you go down the body, up, down, then that represents something lower. You said the smell is the highest of the senses, but then why is the nose below the eyes?
The eyes are actually higher than the nose as well. Eyes and ears are higher as well, in one sense. Each one has a uniqueness. The nose has the uniqueness that I described, that it's the sense of life. There's something even higher than that, which is the ears, and something higher than that, which is the eyes. By the way, just to answer your question in this context, this phase of history is called the eyes. This is called the ears. You know what the difference is? When you see a thing, it's clear, you can't deny it. It's all there. All the parts are there. No construction necessary. Seeing is believing. In Hebrew, the word for a proof, ra'ayah, is the same as the word for seeing, ra'iyah. What do you have here? Prophets. You know what a prophet's called in Hebrew? A chozeh, a seer. Now you move into the oral law. You know what you have to do here? You have to listen. The Zohar, when it talks about demonstrating spiritual principles, it says, Ta chazi, come and see. The Talmud Bavli that we use, it says, Ta shma, come and listen. Hearing happens in the darkness. You hear one sound, then the next, I speak a sentence, one word, the next, you have no idea what I'm saying. Till the end, you construct it yourself. The Hebrew word shema, which means listen, means to assemble parts. Vayishama Shaul etam. Saul gathered the people together. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad doesn't mean hear. It means you, Jewish people, make oneness. Assemble the parts. Take a broken world and see the connections. Are you with me? And therefore you move from seeing. Yeah, at Sinai, it says they saw the sounds. Right? No hearing was possible. It was all clear. You call that seeing. Yes?
How can we, if we can, conceive of this body metaphor in the context of the coming of the Messiah or after the time that the Messiah has come?
This leads us up to the pre-Messianic age. Then there's a massive breakdown, turmoil, chaos of Messianic development. And then we move into a Messianic and post-Messianic world of perfection.
And do we conceive of that as like a new head of history to begin from?
It's a deconstruction to reconstruct completely anew. Yes?
All right, so in the concept of the two phases,
Yeah.
where you are in the womb being fed all the information, and then you're born, and then you just have to walk through the desert, right?
Yeah.
So, but I feel like that only applies in a time of exile, where you can't see Hashem. So now you really have to walk. But how about the times before Chanukah?
The answer is that this map that I've drawn of history in two phases, each of the phases has two phases. And each of those has two phases. It's always like that. This is the general picture, right? But in each stage, you're also going to find every day is going to have this. Every event in your life, everything you study, every friendship, you can break it down finer and finer and finer. But this pattern will always apply.
So what is a second phase for a person who experienced a God in the
As a prophet.
times of the being? Yeah.
That's right. So God spoke to him, he was blown away, right? Lost control of himself completely. And then God stopped speaking. He had to go forward with it and extract from it. You learn from your teacher, your Rabbi. That's unbelievable experience, right? You're just breathtaking to see the greatness of Torah. And then he walks out the room and you got to work with it. This is called chokhmah, what you get from someone else. This is called bina, the female side. Extracting one from, you got to construct it yourself. That's where you get real. Yeah, last question, yeah.
So we're at the bottom of the hill now. Where does that leave us regarding Mashiach? Why does Mashiach come at this bottom?
We hit rock bottom, there's no place left to go. But let me just add this and we'll finish with this. Maybe what you're touching on is this. It's very depressing discussion, no? Isn't this depressing? Isn't it depressing? Well, let's add one more detail. When you get down here, when it gets as bad as it can get, from one perspective, nothing could be worse. From another perspective, this is an intense moment of hopefulness. Let me put it like this. I once heard one of the great rabbis of this generation, someone said to him, Rabbi, if we are that low, how can I, take prayer, for example. Praying, right? I'm going to pray to Hashem, Hashem, please bring the Mashiach. What a hopeless, pathetic, ridiculous prayer. You go back here a few hundred years. Right? You got the greats of Jewish history prayed for the same thing. People enormously greater than me. Hashem didn't grant their wish. Go back to Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was so powerful, when he took off his shoes to begin praying for rain, it started raining. He prayed for Mashiach, no response. Go back to the great prophets, right, who could do anything, manipulate nature. They prayed, nothing doing. Now we come to the end of history, and I'm going to step forward and say, right, Hashem, Tatz is here. Let's get real. How do you put any emotion into your prayer when you know that you are nothing, and people far greater than you ask for the same thing, and they want to. And he answered as follows. He said, you have to understand, this whole thing is one body, it's one continuum. Take prayer, for example. There's a barrel that needs to be filled with Jewish prayer and tears. So the prophets came and they prayed. They put gallons in. Half filled the barrel. Rabbi Akiva came and he put gallons in, filled it up more. Each generation that goes by, it's getting fuller and fuller, and we're putting in less and less. But just before the Mashiach comes, that barrel is going to be almost full. And some broken-hearted, hopeless, pathetic Jew is going to utter the last hopeless prayer. It's going to fill the barrel. And therefore, the worse it gets, right, the better it's getting. Okay, thank you.